How's it going, guys? It's Mr. Lone Wolf, and today I'm going to go and do a quick little mission on flooded foothills. It's called Arrogance. You got to go and grab a TUZ-166 and deliver it. It's not really that far to go. It's not hard. It's not a very long mission or anything like that. Yeah, give me a chance though. Something I wanted to try. I was taking out the Freightliner, what's it called, 114SD for this one, and yeah, I wanted to try something with loading scouts sideways on the flatbed and see how well that goes. So this is a route you've got to take. You've got to kind of cut across. I don't really come across this map that often. There was an upgrade over this side. Yeah, you can see where the TUZ was, and then you just got to kind of cut down a little rock ledge along a river over kind of an icy lake, but it's not as brutal as some of the ice on the other maps. And yeah, drop the TUZ off. Pretty simple. This is what I wanted to try though with the flatbeds in general. I mean, again, of course, I'm bringing a goddamn professional with me. But yeah, a lot of them have about like pretty similar wheelbase. Sticking them sideways on the flatbed because then obviously you can fit more on there. And yeah, I wanted to see if I can get this thing, just in case if I roll or whatever, and get the TUZ-166 on the back as well. So far it went well because what I wanted to try, I thought it'd probably be able to get on. That was like stage 1, getting it this far and locking it down, like loading the vehicles or packing them or whatever. But I did it the other week, or I suppose getting on for probably a bloody month ago now, on the big 8-slot trailer, and I put 12 loafs on it and they're all sideways, and at one point or another they kept tipping off the trailer a little bit. So yeah, I just wanted to see if it would actually work in a practical sense, not just like, you know, you go down the road, hit a rock and they fall off. This was a quick little test run. I stuck a TUZ-166 on there as well, just to make sure that it'd work and pack and all the rest of it, so I could set off and give it a go. And yeah, we'll get stuck into it. Like I said, this is a bit of a seriously simple mission, really. It's funny with this map. I kind of feel like the maps themselves are actually pretty well put together and thought out, I reckon. Like, I get they seem to have dialed up like the mechanics and the terrain resistance on these maps, but I reckon that was done like at a later stage. Yeah, the maps themselves actually seem pretty well put together. Some of the missions as well seem pretty good. And then there's also like elements of it where I reckon they just kind of knocked together some missions to pad it out a bit at the end, and missions like this seem pretty simple. Like, they probably didn't have this planned for very long and just kind of, yeah, added it in along with a few others, because, like I say, you got all the contracts that some of them are pretty damn complicated. I've not even got into most of them yet. I've started a few of them, but doing them in one run is kind of unlikely. I just kind of get bored and think, well, before I get too bored of that mission, I'll go off and do something else. So I think one of the conveyor belt missions I've got like halfway done. I'm not sure as well, actually, speaking of that quickly, with the conveyor belt missions, I think it's the conveyor belt section 1 I've done, and I've delivered the metal beams, and there was something else. I've just got to go and grab consumables, and then I've got to build a cabin and take that. The reason I originally abandoned that mission was I only took 1 piece of wood, not 2, so I couldn't build a cabin, and I was just like, oh, for God's sake. That's why a little while ago Bruce was wearing some wood on his head, because I went and dropped that off. Yeah, I wanted to actually, I was going to do the conveyor belt section 1 the other day, but I might attempt, if I can be bothered, to restart the mission, because I was just curious what actually happened. I picked up, obviously, metal beams, and again, off the top of my head, I can't remember what the other thing was, but they were from, like, the places around the warehouses, etc. The metal beams were a limited item, so I'm kind of got a gut feeling if I restart the mission it won't restock that metal back to where it originally was, but I'll see. Maybe it'll just completely delete it off the game and then that's it. But yeah, I wouldn't mind finding that out. That's why I've kind of left it at the minute, because I've got to find a night where I can be bothered to reset the whole mission and essentially do it again. And if it does take my metal beams or whatever and I've got to go elsewhere, off the top of my head I can't remember where you got to go to get metal beams, but yeah, it'll kind of change the mission and all the rest of it, so I'll see. I'm kind of saving it for now. But yeah, those sort of missions feel like they were planned and crafted alongside the actual map themselves, like it all kind of fits. That's what she said. Yeah, whereas like these things just sort of feel a little bit, they just added it last minute, like, oh, just to bulk up, pad out the missions a little bit. It's not the end of the world, they're just a little bit short, like by the time you've barely got started in them, you sort of completed. Yeah, like I said, this was just a good reason though to bring this thing out, the Freightliner 114SD. I don't really use it a hell of a lot, to be honest. It's not even a bad truck. It's got very nice steering, which I like about it. I always like that. I remember when I reviewed it. As far as power and everything goes, it's not that bad all around. It's one of those trucks where it's like decent, but nothing about it really wows you or anything. It's just kind of like, yeah, not too bad. I mean, Taiga is probably the best example of, I wouldn't say there's a whole lot the Taiga can do that's like amazing 10 out of 10, but it does everything pretty damn well. It's like just a quite, yeah, it's got quite a high bar set, but it's kind of just does everything pretty well. There is more specialised trucks that suit each little area a bit better, I would say. But yeah, this one, like, if the Taiga was about an 8 out of 10 averaged out, this is somewhere around 6 or 7. Yeah, this is the TUZ you got to grab. First of all, for whatever reason, I know I caught the tyre on the back of the flatbed, but it always rotates the bloody thing I'm trying to load. It rotates it whatever way I don't want or need it to go, and then it takes all year to rotate it back around. So I started messing around. In the end I gave up. Because I'm sitting on a bit of a slope, even when I get the TUZ loaded properly on the flatbed, it just starts rolling off backwards. It'd be nice if they put the handbrakes on vehicles when you're trying to load them like this, because yeah, unless you're on flat ground then they just keep rolling off, hence why I just drove forward a bit, found some flat ground, and we'll give it another go. So far though, while I've been yapping on, the Lo4f, the goddamn horse of a vehicle, he's stayed on just fine. Which means, yeah, even though the wheels are pretty much overhanging, the little sort of wheel chocks you can see under the Lo4f wheels, they're basically hanging over the edge, but it stayed on pretty well. It didn't tip. I was definitely leaning around a bit. I also think if I did tip at this point, no, then again, actually, it'd probably go far enough to where it'd unpack the Lo4f. I was going to say, at the minute, I can't really tip fully sideways to the point where it wouldn't let me start my engine, because like the Lo4f is poking out each side. That does work. Another thing, if I held it like that with a crane and kind of hugged the Lo4f like a little rugby ball again, yeah, when you tip, you can't go like enough over that it'll just cut your engine out, which is pretty handy. It has saved me a few times in the past. Yeah, what I noticed now though, I go to pack the vehicle, the Lo4f's just fine, but for whatever reason, it wasn't letting me pack the TUZ. So I believe I edited it out, but I basically repaired the TUZ, fixed all the tyres, the engine, suspension, all that stuff. For what it's worth, I think you need 350 points, I think it was, to repair the TUZ, and then 4 tyres. You don't have to repair it though. It was just, yeah, the Lo4f's such a goddamn professional. We had the points available, we got it all done. Yeah, once I fixed it, and I kind of just moved it a little bit further back from the Lo4f, I don't really know what the crack is with that, because when I loaded all 12 Lo4fs on that trailer, they were all absolutely wedged up next to each other about as close as you could get, and they all packed and unpacked just fine. But yeah, this TUZ was also had like collapsed suspension and 4 burst tyres, so I'm not sure if that was making a difference. Maybe as well, it was packed, but it just wasn't showing you those like wheel blocks. I'm not too sure. I didn't really go to test it out too badly. Yeah, this is the little rock ledge you got to go along. To be honest, this was actually like sort of the little funniest part of the mission, because the Lo4f and the TUZ now is sort of making me a little bit of a wide load. Yeah, you got to try not to catch them on the rocks. You'll see just to the left as well, there's another Lo4f. There's a Tatra in there as well. I went to drive down this river with the current, and again the Tatran just got completely stuck. I couldn't get it out, so I sent in a Lo4f and I rescued the Tatran. This little ice lake as well, by the way, I've been driving over here a little bit tonight. It doesn't really seem to behave like the other ice, and I'd say that's a good thing. Rather than just being like a pure sheet of ice at the top that breaks through and that's it, once you break through you're done. It's kind of like, acts a little bit more mushy like that. You can sink into a bit. It's a little bit like mud, but with more firmness to it. And again, I actually think overall that's pretty cool, because as much as I did like it when they added the ice to Lake Covd and the way it breaks and you kind of punch through and all the rest of it, after a while you soon learn basically everything gets stuck in the ice once you're fully punched through. You can get a bit lucky and all the rest of it, but I've tried, you know, most vehicles multiple times and there's nothing really that's got 100% success rate. Yeah, it just gets to the point where it's like something you're best off avoiding. This ice, I'd argue, yeah, it's a little, you'll see now, so I just left this last bit in. You can still sink through it and everything, but it's a little bit more forgiving, as in like you got a second chance. It's a lot easier, it felt like anyway, to reverse back out of there. Like the stuff on Lake Covden now, once your tyres punch through, you were just kind of locked into position and you just wheel spin regardless. This, as I said, it's behaving a little bit more like mud, a bit I suppose like heading towards frozen mud. Yeah, the front starts to go in. I Could have possibly just left it in low range and tried driving through it at half a mile an hour, but I changed my mind. I wanted to reverse out. But yeah, the fact that it actually bites in, and it's kind of, I'm going out like a ramp, I'm not just dropped off a ledge and that's the end of it. Yeah, it's just, I think it's a better style of ice overall. You can see there to the left, that's where I cut the Tatron through earlier, and that kind of did the same, sank a bit and bobbed back up. But yeah, overall, long-term wise, I'd be happier taking my chances across this ice, whereas normally on stuff like Lake Cod, I just, yeah, try to avoid it unless I'm purposely messing around and pushing my luck. But yeah, anyway, that's about it for today. There's goddamn professional number 2, or about number 30 by now. There's the Tatron it saved. That's about it for today though. Job done. I hope you've enjoyed. Thanks for watching, and I'll be back soon.